It was supposed to be just a normal sleepover. Nothing unusual, nothing frightening. Just a group of close friends, staying up too late, laughing too loud, and eventually drifting off to sleep one by one. But something was waiting for us that night. We had all fallen asleep pretty late, sometime past midnight. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels almost wrong, like the silence itself is holding its breath. Around 2 a.m., my eyes snapped open. I don't know why. There was no dream, no alarm, just this sudden, cold feeling that something in the room had changed. The air felt heavier, thicker, and there was this smell, faint, like old wood and something damp that hadn't been there before. Then I heard it. Kitchen cabinets, opening and shutting. The sound was slow and deliberate, not like someone frantically searching for something. It was rhythmic, patient, like whatever was doing it had all the time in the world. I lay completely still for a moment, telling myself it was nothing. Maybe the wind, maybe the house settling. But the sound didn't stop. If anything, it grew louder. I forced myself to get up. The hallway was dark, darker than it should have been. I remember thinking the nightlight near the bathroom had been on when we fell asleep. Now it was off. The entire hallway stretched out in front of me like a black tunnel, and every single step I took felt like a mistake. When I reached the kitchen doorway, I stopped. The cabinets were still. Everything looked completely untouched, not a single thing out of place. But the moment I stepped inside, the temperature dropped sharply, so sharply that I could see my own breath forming tiny clouds in the air in front of me. I stood there, frozen, scanning every corner of the room. Nobody was there. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. The cabinet door above the sink slowly swung open on its own. Just one, silently. And then, it stopped. Like something had opened it, looked inside, and simply lost interest. I ran back to the room. I pulled the blanket over my head like a child, and told myself over and over again that I had imagined all of it. I hadn't. The next morning I woke up to the sound of crying. My friend, I'll call her Ava, was sitting at the edge of the couch with her knees pulled to her chest, shaking. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red and swollen like she had been crying for hours. I asked her what was wrong. She looked at me, and in the quietest voice I have ever heard, she said, "I heard them last night." She told us that she had woken up at almost the exact same time I did. She hadn't come out of the room, though. She had just lain there, completely paralyzed with fear, listening. Because coming from the kitchen, clear as a real human conversation, she heard voices. Two voices. Low, hollow, like sound coming from the bottom of a very deep well. And they were saying, "We are not wanted here anymore. We aren't important." Over and over again, the same words, repeated in that slow, empty tone, like a confession, or maybe a warning, until the voices simply faded away into nothing. Ava said the worst part wasn't the words themselves. The worst part was the sadness in them. Because it didn't sound like a threat. It didn't sound like something trying to scare us. It sounded like something that was grieving, something lost, something forgotten, wandering through that kitchen in the middle of the night, opening cabinets that no longer held anything for them, speaking words that no one alive was ever meant to hear. We left that house before noon. None of us ever talked about spending the night there again. And sometimes, even now, in that quiet moment just before I fall asleep, I think about those voices. And I wonder if they're still there, still walking through that dark kitchen, still whispering to each other in the cold. I really hope they're wrong. My house has always felt a little different from other houses. Not different in a way that I could ever easily explain to someone. Just different in the way that certain rooms felt colder than others. In the way that sometimes, very late at night, You'd hear the faint sound of footsteps, and then nothing. We told ourselves it was an old house. Old houses make sounds. That's what old houses do. But then came the day everything changed. I had motion detectors installed throughout the house. A full burglar alarm system, sensors on every door, every window, and one detector placed directly inside my dad's bedroom. We had it set up properly, tested, confirmed working. There was absolutely no reason for it to go off unless something, or someone, was physically moving inside that room. One afternoon, I had stepped outside to run a quick errand down the street. The house was completely locked, empty, nobody inside. That's when my phone started screaming. The burglar alarm had been triggered. I stopped walking and just stared at my phone screen, confused. A cold wave rolled through me, even though the afternoon sun was still warm on my skin. I called the alarm company immediately and they confirmed the police had already been dispatched. By the time I got back, 2 officers were standing in my front yard. They had done a full sweep of the house. Every door, still locked. Every window, still shut. No signs of forced entry. No signs of any intruder. Nothing stolen. Nothing moved. Nothing except one thing. The motion detector in my dad's bedroom had been triggered. That specific sensor. That specific room. The officers showed me the log. It had registered movement at 2:47 in the afternoon, right in the center of the room, directly near my dad's side of the bed. My dad shrugged it off. He said it was a defect, a faulty sensor. He had the entire alarm system professionally replaced within the week. Brand new equipment, different company, fresh installation. 3 days later, it happened again. Same room, same sensor location, same time, almost to the minute. 2:49 p.m. this time. The alarm shrieked through the empty house while we were all out, and once again the police found absolutely nothing. No person, no animal, no explanation. My dad's jaw tightened. He replaced the system a second time. When it happened a third time, nobody said anything for a long moment. We all just sat around the kitchen table in complete silence, staring at the alarm report on the company's app. Movement detected. Dad's bedroom. 2:51 p.m. A Tuesday afternoon. The house had been locked and empty for less than an hour. And then something else happened that made my blood run cold. That same evening, I was passing my dad's bedroom door when I noticed it was slightly open. I was certain we had closed it fully before leaving that morning. I pushed it open slowly and stepped inside, and immediately stopped. The framed photograph on my dad's bedside table had been turned around. It was a picture of our whole family from years ago, a happy photograph, and it was now facing the wall, away from the room, away from the bed. Nobody had touched it. Nobody admitted to touching it. And the more we thought about it, the more we realized none of us had even been in that room that day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, piecing things together in my head. The motion detector always triggered in the same spot, always in the afternoon, always in my dad's room, never anywhere else in the house. Not the hallway, not the living room, not my room. Just that one room, just that one corner. My grandmother was the one who finally said what the rest of us were quietly thinking. She reminded us that my mother had passed away when I was very young. She reminded us that my dad's bedroom had been their bedroom, that the spot where the detector kept triggering, right beside the bed, was the exact side where my mother used to sleep. And then she said something that I have never been able to forget. She said, "Maybe she is still checking in on him." After that, we stopped replacing the alarm system. I am not someone who believes in signs. I never have been. I have always been the kind of person who needs a logical explanation for everything, a reason, a cause, something that makes sense when you sit down and think about it carefully. That October afternoon changed everything. It was a regular Saturday, nothing special about it. I had wandered into Barnes & Noble the way I usually did. No particular plan, no particular book in mind. Just browsing, just killing time. But the moment I stepped through the front door, something felt slightly off. I couldn't name it. It was nothing I could point to or describe properly. Just this low, humming unease sitting at the back of my neck. Like the feeling you get when you're absolutely certain someone is standing directly behind you, but when you turn around, there is nobody there. I shook it off and kept walking. Near the center of the store, they had set up a special display table for October. Ghost stories, haunted histories, paranormal encounters. The books were arranged neatly under a small sign that read, "True Hauntings." I almost walked past it, but one book stopped me completely. It was sitting slightly apart from the others, almost like it had been placed there deliberately, waiting. The cover was dark, worn at the edges, and in the center was a photograph. A real photograph, not an illustration, not a digital rendering. A genuine printed image of what the caption beneath it described as a captured ghost. The figure in the photograph was pale and translucent, barely there, like smoke trying to hold a human shape. Its face was turned slightly toward the camera, and its eyes, if you could even call them eyes, were two hollow, dark spaces staring directly outward. Directly at whoever was looking. I stood there completely still, holding that book with both hands, unable to look away. The store noise around me, the music, the quiet conversations, the footsteps, seemed to fade out slowly, like someone turning down a volume dial. And then the temperature dropped. Not gradually, not slowly. It dropped in one sharp, sudden wave, like walking into a freezer. My breath caught in my throat. I looked around and the other customers nearby didn't seem to react at all. They just kept moving, kept talking, completely unbothered. Only I felt it. I looked back down at the photograph, and I could have sworn, in that single moment, that the figure's head had shifted. Just slightly, just enough, like it had turned a fraction more toward me than it had been before. I told myself my eyes were playing tricks on me, and then my ring started to heat up. It was a simple, silver ring. I had worn it on my right hand for over 2 years without a single problem. But standing there at that table, holding that book, I felt the metal warming against my finger. Slowly at first, like it had been sitting in sunlight, then faster, then uncomfortably hot. I switched my gaze from the book down to my hand. The ring was trembling. I don't mean vibrating the way a phone vibrates. I mean shaking, rattling against my finger with this tight, frantic energy, like something unseen was pressing against it from all sides at once. I tried to pull it off. It wouldn't move. And then, with a sharp, clean crack that cut right through the background noise of the entire store, it shattered. Just like that. Gone. Broken into 4 or 5 separate pieces that scattered across the display table and landed right on top of the open book. Right on top of that photograph. I stood there with my mouth open, completely frozen. A woman nearby turned and stared at me. A store employee a few aisles over looked up, but nobody came over. Nobody said anything. They all just looked, and then quietly looked away, like some instinct was telling them to keep their distance. With a shaking hand, I reached down and touched the broken pieces. They were ice cold. Not cool, not room temperature. Ice cold. Colder than the table beneath them, colder than the air around them, colder than anything that had just been sitting on my warm finger moments ago should ever have been capable of feeling. I pulled my hand back immediately. I left the book exactly where it was. I left the broken pieces sitting right there on that table. I walked straight to the exit without stopping, without looking back, without buying a single thing. The cold feeling on my fingertip lasted for the rest of that day, and that night, when I finally climbed into bed and closed my eyes, I saw that photograph again behind my eyelids. That pale, shapeless figure. those hollow, dark spaces where eyes should have been, looking right at me. I have never gone back to that store in October, and I have never worn a ring on that hand again. Some things break for a reason, and some things, once they have noticed you, never really stop. Stay safe, guys.